My name is Alexandra Swartz, and today I will be discussing with you the resilience of urban agriculture in Lansing to COVID-19, which is my research project with Dr. Jennifer Hodbod and Dr. Lissy Gorelnick. On December 1st of 2020, our research team hosted a virtual workshop with key stakeholders in Lansing's urban agriculture system serving as participants. Ranging from policymakers, gardeners, to nonprofit directors, we had a variety of perspectives and opinions that were represented. This workshop served as a follow-up to our previous workshop that was held 14 months earlier with similar voices and participants. Previously, discussions were centralized around which elements make the urban agriculture system in Lansing resilient or vulnerable to shocks. While we weren't anticipating a shock to occur so quickly afterwards, the COVID-19 pandemic did serve to test our conclusions, and our workshop in December further allowed us to reflect on what we learned and how our system has endured the shock. Our main question being, how was the resilience of Lansing's urban agriculture system impacted by the shock of the COVID-19 pandemic? Resilience, as it pertains to social ecological systems, is the capacity of a system to respond to change through coping, adaptation, or transformation, while still maintaining the structure, function, and identity and support positive and proactive development. Our methods for organizing and mediating discussions in the workshop were to create 4 randomized breakout rooms, all with differing mediators. These breakout rooms were shuffled each of the 3 sessions, and questions were asked regarding challenges and opportunities, needs for capacity building, and also the changes in vision for Lansing's urban agriculture system. These discussions were shared after each of the breakout sessions in our large overall group. We assessed the resilience of the system using the 7 resilience principles to deduce whether the variables observed increased or decreased the resilience of the overall system. We cannot say for certain that the system is resilient, only that because the system stayed true to its identity, it indicated resilience upon being faced with a shock to the system and its functions. We have a synthesis report that's going to be published on the Community Sustainability website and shared with participants in the near future, and it will summarize our findings and our analysis of the resilience of the system. As shown in Figure 1, social ecological system resilience is represented by 7 core principles. These principles were applied to our discussions to assess the increase or decrease of each principle, depending on specific variables of the conversations had by participants in the workshop. Table 1 visualizes how we organized our data by categorizing each discussion topic as a variable and determining which variables increased or decreased the resilience of the system when applied to the 7 resilience principles. The table shown here is only a small segment of our full data collected, but it serves as an example of some of the key variables and findings across the workshop. Utilizing the variables shown in the table and the 7 resilience principles, we applied these to the coping, adaptation, and transformation of the identity of the system. The variables observed in the workshop that only had a short-term reactive impact were categorized as coping mechanisms, while other variables that were observed having a medium-term impact on the system but were more so proactive, we considered to be adaptation. There was no transformation of the system that was observed during this workshop. The 3 main principles that indicated resilience within the system can be applied to the coping, adaptation, and transformation pyramids shown in Figure 2. A variety of learning occurred for multiple groups, consumers, gardeners, and organizations as obstacles with communication, shifts in roles, and changes to traditional patterns and daily functions took place. The resilience of the system is highlighted here as these groups were able to cope with the changes that occurred while still remaining true to their mission. Furthermore, participation within the system was also forced to change. While participation decreased initially in community gardens, the learning in the public was seen to increase interest in urban agriculture. As growers and consumers, they increasingly valued food's impacts on their health, their economy, and their environment. This translated to an increase in participation in the broad urban agriculture system. This adaptation of how community members can participate in urban agriculture is something that occurred as a reaction to the pandemic. However, stakeholders believe it will stick around long term as home gardening and access to fresh produce becomes more of a priority. Lansing's urban agriculture system has often utilized one another to network and share resources. This connectivity has long existed in the system, but was forced to cope in the ways that communication and working together once existed before the shock of the pandemic. The hierarchy of the organizations was very relevant when communications were forced to shift as government mandates and closures of businesses became a daily occurrence. Core organizations such as the Allen Neighborhood Center, the Garden Project, Michigan Farmers Market Association, and Michigan Food and Farming Systems all supported the transfer of information through the pandemic. Coping and adaptation of the functions of the system occurred as reactive changes that have the potential to become long-term. However, there was no transformation of the identity or visions of the stakeholders or system observed within our discussions. Something new that was brought to our attention, though, that had not been mentioned prior to the COVID-19 pandemic was the desire to plan more proactively rather than reactively. They wanted to do this to better prepare for future shocks to the system. Since there was little to no change in the overall identity of Lansing's urban agriculture system, this is indicative of a system that's resilient despite being faced with a major shock. This indication of resilience is a good thing because it shows that our system has the potential to be able to bounce back from other future shocks. Our future plans for our research include holding another workshop in the future that will allow us to further reflect on how the resilience of the system may have changed. Continuously checking in with stakeholders in Lansing's urban agriculture system will allow us to learn from these shocks and how to better adapt and prepare for future shocks to the social ecological system. We're also making efforts to include new voices and participants in our future workshops and projects, with hopes that this will allow for more diversity in our perspective, while also creating a space that minorities and Indigenous groups can feel heard and represent their experiences as well. Finally, we're taking away what we've learned from the last couple of workshops that we've conducted and hoping to apply these to other systems and expand on how we can further increase the resilience of these systems. We also hope to prepare for future shocks while still maintaining the overall identity of the urban agriculture system here in Lansing.